almost no large cottonwoods left in place along the river bottom. New ones would grow each year because the river bottom flooded, and so they would drop their seeds and new sprouts would come up. And so I would say that our oldest cottonwoods that we have in Bismarck are around 125 years old. Now this is a very tall cottonwood. It's right down by the shops that are used in the for the Bismarck Park District and Sertoma Park. This one is 125 feet tall. And its circumference 14.4 feet, average crown 79 points, 324. So although this isn't our largest cottonwood, it's the tallest cottonwood that we found here in Bismarck. And you can take a walk or drive through Sertoma Park to see a lot of these magnificent cottonwoods. Okay, Nancy, now I want you to come up and talk to them about our next tree. Our next tree is... Okay.
Yeah, everybody thinks that maybe this is an extra tall tree, but it ended up that it wasn't, but it's the most fun tree because I think everybody has seen it and gone around it. A lot of it was broken off, so when we were trying to get the canopy, it didn't offer us much of a canopy. But I think everybody has seen this tree. And I think it's just kind of like a legend, a famous tree for all of us.
As we were looking for the largest trees in Bismarck, people would always say, have you measured that tree in the middle of the road? And everyone knows about this Burley County tree. They've driven by it and said, but you should have seen Nancy out there standing in the middle of the road, you know, measuring this tree. There's always traffic coming along. We did not want her to get run over. She was very brave. She was very brave in measuring this tree. I asked the city forester because also as we were measuring this tree and talking about it, people would say, oh, I hear that tree's gonna be cut down. You know, that tree's been there since I moved to Bismarck in 1970. And their people are very fond of this tree as well. The city forester said at this point there are no plans to take this tree down in the middle of the road. He knows it's a very famous tree here in Bismarck. So we hope it stays healthy, all right? And that no one runs into it, right? Right. So drive carefully around that tree. Okay, now the largest cottonwood here in Bismarck that we found is this one down at the municipal ballpark. You saw Nancy and I measuring this. 18 feet 10 inches, height 105, average crown 89 feet, score 353. We had a lot of people call us about trees that we could not count as a champion, and I'll tell you why. Many cottonwoods come up with a base. They start out with 3 sprouts coming out of the ground, or 3 or 4. And so as the tree grows older, those sprouts grow together into one big trunk. Nancy and I got really excited about a huge tree down by one of the ballparks. We said, okay, we found a bigger one than this one, and it was like 24 feet around. But it was several trees sprouts that had joined together into one large mass of base. So we had some disappointed homeowners when we would come to measure their large cottonwood tree. We'd have to say, you know, this is a beautiful tree. You have a wonderful tree here. But we can't count it as one of the largest in Bismarck because it comes from multiple shoots out of the ground.
We found lots of our cottonwoods in Sibley Park. It was a wonderful place to go and find nice tall trees. And another thing about the elm trees in our city on the boulevards, so many of them were placed too close together. So we didn't have the canopies that we wanted either. And some of them probably couldn't even get to their maximum height or width or anything because they were too close. The roots were intertwined and too close to each other.
Now here is one of Bismarck's champion ash trees. It's located at 1910 La Forest. Where is La Forest, you're saying? I learned streets that I had never known before in my life doing this project because we were going through neighborhoods that I had not, been in very often. La Forest is to the east of the Capitol building, about a half a mile east is where you can find this tree, east of the Bismarck Capitol. It's planted on the boulevard. Its circumference is 13 feet, its height 83 feet, average crown 71, score 257. This is a beautiful, beautiful ash tree, and we're waiting to see, we nominated this tree because we want to see if it could be the champion for the state ash tree. So in a few weeks, we should learn the answer to that question when the state puts out its champion tree list for 2022, and we'll find out whether this tree is added to that list. All right, so it could be.
And one thing about this tree too, as you can see, there aren't other trees next to it. And it didn't have a lot of space to grow. So, and it's in a quote unquote newer area, you know, than many of our trees. So it really had a good chance to become a champion.
This tree is about 70 years old, and there are other ash trees planted around the street that are not nearly as big as this tree. The owner said, my gosh, I do not know, what has made this tree grow so well and so big.
Well, you can see the height because the house is probably, well, I don't know, I'm thinking 15 to 20 feet tall maybe.
Yeah, you can see how tall it is compared to that house. It's a beautiful tree. You're going to want to find it on the list there. So what are the benefits of our urban forest? Trees help us absorb the sounds of traffic in urban areas by 40%. Neighborhoods with trees are 7 to 9 degrees cooler than those without. Trees reduce energy costs up to 25% by shading buildings and protecting them from winter winds. Homes with trees have higher property values. Green space plays a major role in improving mental and physical health. That's the reason I'm doing this project, is because trees just make me feel better. And when I take a walk and I'm out in a neighborhood with beautiful trees, it just makes my walk so much more pleasant. And planting and maintaining trees absorb carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, mitigating effects of climate change. So that's another good reason that we've learned about in recent years to plant trees. I know that when I live near Washington Street, and you know the controversy that surrounded Washington Street and whether it should be widened or not about 15 or more years ago. And we wanted to have the trees preserved because everything that we had read about it showed that trees provide a calming effect to traffic. And we wanted, since it's a residential neighborhood, for cars to just slow down a little bit as they came under that nice big canopy of trees. And so if you drive through our neighborhood on Avenue C or on Washington Street, I think people still feel that same effect when they come through that area. But it isn't just in my neighborhood. Now throughout Bismarck, it's way up north of the interstate. We have these marvelous tree plantings. How many of you, what is the road that goes by the new supermarket up there? Is it State? What's the name?
43rd.
Yeah, 43rd Street. They've just planted a whole bunch of new trees on 43rd Street. So you can see now why. Trees help absorb the sounds of traffic by 40%, and it'll provide a calming effect to the traffic, and they play a major role in improving mental and physical health. So, like I said earlier in the program, the city of Bismarck plants around 1,000 trees, and that's not the homeowners who are planting their own trees on their own properties. Now you're going to probably say, well, what about the trees that are coming down? Yes, we do have trees that are coming down in Bismarck. We have, this is not a picture of a tree coming down, but I'm just putting this up. You can look at a beautiful tree while we're finishing this up. About 250 trees needed to come down in the city of Bismarck this past year. What played a role in that? Dutch elm disease always plays a role in that. Also, the drought has played a role in that because we're in our second year of major drought in the city. Average rainfall in Bismarck is about 18 inches. We had 28 inches 3 years ago in 2020. Then we had 8 inches in 20, I forget. But anyway, then we had 8 inches of rain and moisture the next year, and last year in 2021, we had just 12 inches of moisture. So these last 2 years have been hard on trees. It isn't that they are killed immediately, but they're weakened. So that's why we were so happy this fall when we got that 3.5 inches of rain to help these trees, all of these huge trees go into winter, all right? Now, there's another disease that's going through town and it affects American elms, and it's called scale, all right? And it's what makes those trees look really, really black. You'll see some American elms look much more dark. The bark color is much darker than others. And they have scale, and it doesn't necessarily kill them, but if it's a combination then of scale and drought together, then it can really weaken the trees and make them have to go down. I saw one home on Avenue C where 5 trees were taken down due to scale, all right, that were just from the one house. And these were probably 75-year-old elms, so it made a big difference to the shade to that particular house. So all over Bismarck, we have these beautiful trees now that have been planted and maintained by our city. And so I would say that we have now one of the most beautiful cities in North Dakota due to our urban forest. And I hope you'll continue to plant trees because we have lived up to the vision of that man in the 1890s who said, we can do this. And we have. And in our 150 years of living here in Bismarck, I think we have really accomplished a wonderful goal of having a beautiful city by planting trees. Thank you. If you have any questions, now Nancy and I are not arborists, all right? We're just volunteers with the city forestry department. And so we may refer you to the city forester if you ask any questions that are too tough. But if you have any questions about our project, we're glad to answer them. Okay, go ahead, let's see, who's got one? Just yell it out because it's hard for me to see. Okay, go ahead.
Are there any plans to put together a brochure for a walking tour of the trees in town?
Yes, there is one already. Okay? In fact, it is not a walking tour though, because these trees are rather spread apart. So it suggests places that you might want to walk, and it also suggests places that you might drive to find the trees that are on your list. And so this was prepared for the city of Bismarck, in December, and it's on the city forester's website, and it's called City, you look under City Forester, and then you want to look under City Tree Data, D-A-T-A. And then you will be able to find this brochure that's been put together about where to find these champion trees and suggest places where you might see other huge trees that we are here in Bismarck, okay? So it's under Searching for Champion Trees in Bismarck and Learning the History and Stories of Bismarck's Trees. If you put in champion trees on the forestry website, you'll be directed to this brochure also. Thank you for that question.
Susan?
Yes.
I have a question. Obviously, all these trees have taken a lot of time and resources to get to be as big and enjoyable and beneficial as they are. And with some of the threats, the diseases and things, for anyone who's interested in maybe preventing or helping protect their trees, do you know of any resources or any information that people can look to?
I would say call the city forester's office. He is very accessible to people. I know even before I started on this project, I would call the city forester if I had a question, and he would get back to me. He's very, very busy in the months of May through September. So if you have a question that you can ask in the off months through the winter months, that's the better place to go, to call him during those times. But I would say we have a very good city forester, and he will be very good to help you answer your questions about your trees. Emily, do you know any other resources?
Well, I know that there are inoculations that you can get for example, the scale.
Yes.
And so I know that contacting the city forestry would probably be a really good step for anybody interested in learning more about that.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Emily. Yes, back here again.
Yes, Susan, I'm on the Forestry Advisory Board, Citizen Board, and one of the things, you mentioned the when you need water, and it may cost a lot, but it is actually an investment. And so we need to learn to recalibrate how we think about the amount we spend watering, and realize that that's an investment in our property, in the city's property as well, and keep watering those trees. If the grass goes brown, so be it, but please water our trees through this, keep them healthy.
They were, I have seen Bismarck City forestry water trucks going around the city this fall, watering the new trees that had been planted, because they knew that new trees are most susceptible if they're, not watered. Like I said, fortunately this fall we got 3.5 inches of rain, and that really helped our trees, because it's a very, it's a time when going into winter, those trees needed that water. So we'll just see what happens this next year. Hopefully we'll keep getting lots of snow, and we'll get a lot more moisture between now and June, which is when the trees really suck up a lot of their moisture, between April and then the middle of July. Okay. Other questions or comments? Yes?
What's the name of the device you use to calculate the height of the tree?
And where did you buy it?
Okay. This is it's just called a tangent height gauge. All right? And we didn't buy it. The city of Bismarck, the Forestry department, because they knew they had trained us to use this equipment, so they loaned this equipment to Nancy and I to use. So we have not bought this.
I'm trying to find it. I might have found it on Amazon. Yeah. Yeah.
I learned in Boy Scouts decades ago that if you hold a pencil in your hand and look from there to the top of the tree and then dip it to the side and have somebody walk out to the end, you can pace off of all that tree. It's just the right angle, so.
And the city forester wanted to make sure we were doing this accurately, because they knew that we wanted to recommend some of these trees to the state for the Champion Tree Program, and the state doesn't take our measurements. They come in then and do their own measurements to make sure that we have measured them correctly. So we were trying very hard to be accurate, so that when we would send in recommendations, that they would have a good chance of success. Yes?
Are there any plans to do this study in Mandan?
All you need is someone in Mandan who wants to go out like Nancy and I did and do this project, okay? And so we had people talking to us. One lady, we had such fun reactions from the people as we went on to their homes and said, may we go on your property to measure your tree? But this tree was on a boulevard, so we didn't need to talk to the woman whose house it was. And so she came out her front door and she said, "You women sure have a strange hobby." We're down there measuring and stretching these things, and she's right, we do have a strange hobby. And we had people were so happy that we were looking at their trees, and they were just delighted, because people are proud of the trees that they have planted on their property, and they want to talk to someone about it. And besides, we weren't there to talk about politics, and we weren't there to talk about COVID, so it was a great topic. And we would go and I would go up to their front door, and of course I didn't go into the house, but people would say, "Do you want to come in?" Because they hadn't seen anyone, in a while. And so this was last year when we were in the middle of, before we even had inoculation. So people were just thrilled that we had taken on this project, and that we were there measuring their tree, and they're going to be very disappointed their tree is not on this list I passed out to you, because there was a lot of interested people. Is my tree going to make the list? I don't know, I'd have to say. So we're going to have some folks who are disappointed about that. But yes, I'm sure that once people learn that in Bismarck we're measuring our trees and finding champions, especially if we get a few more champions on the state list, there'll be a little competition. Mine will start saying, "I think we've got a bigger American elm than that," which would be good. Okay.
Talking about how much fun you had with the project, we've got a book a friend of mine sent me that's called The Champion Trees of Arkansas.
Okay.
And an artist who has a place in Hot Springs did this kind of project, talked to people and drew. Yeah.
Okay, I published 2 books, so maybe. But it is, it's a wonderful thing. And now as you go around the country, you might visit a park and you'll see that they'll say, you know, there's a champion, national champion in our park, you're gonna wanna go to see it. I'll tell you where there's a huge cottonwood. It's up in Cross Ranch State Park. They don't call it a champion tree, they call it a heritage tree. And you have to walk a short distance from the road to get to that tree, but it is a great big old cottonwood, yeah. Yeah. Okay, yes?
There is a giant ponderosa pine in the backyard over in Highland Acres that I think might be a state champion. Someone ought to go take a look at that.
Well, see, Nancy, that's what she wants. She says we should branch out from these 5 varieties that we've been looking for and branch out a little bit more and this summer, so we'll see.
Yeah, and another thing that's fun is you may see a tree as you're driving and it looks like that's the biggest one I've ever seen. But then when you get into the yard, it may not have much of a trunk. So, yeah, but it can be too.
Anything else? Yes.
Just for the fun of it, in Maryland, there is a big cottonwood right on Highway 6 by the golf course, South End there.
Okay.
Take the Highway 6 going south, and it's on the east side of the road, just north of the golf course.
What we're trying to do, you see, what we're trying to do is we find these big trees, is I always had, and I started from the beginning, I had the list of the trees that were the largest with the ones in the state champion trees, all right? And so I knew what I was trying to beat, as far as the champion trees of the state. So I looked, and our champion cottonwood in Grand Forks has a score of 488. All right, 30 feet around, 105 feet tall, and 92 foot spread. All right, so we did not find any tree as big as that one in the Red River Valley. And yes, the Red River Valley, they have some bigger trees because they get more rainfall, you know, which helps that DNA move that tree along and to make it be a nice, great big tree. But I thought, well, there's a chance here, and yes, I think we do have some possible winners, cold winners. But we have, it doesn't matter if we don't have the biggest tree in the state here in Bismarck. I mean, we have beautiful trees, and we have big trees here.
And we have some ones in Maryland because nobody's measuring.
And the hope of this program is to open your eyes to go around Bismarck and look for more of these, more big trees that you think are gorgeous. And if you spot any, you know, and see, my phone number is in the phone book, 223-8975. You can always just call me up and say, I've got a big tree I want you to check out. Or the better place even is the city forester, because he's keeping track too, and then lets Nancy and I know. Okay? Either way can work.
We have 5 cottonwoods in our backyard, and there's a lot of leaves on them.
I know. You have to like leaves in order to like trees. That's right. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you.